Welcome to the second part of our meeting today. Let me introduce myself and introduce my partner for this 1 hour and a half. So I'm Dionysia, and I used to be the chair of the Mediterranean Parliamentarians on Sustainable Development, a network of parliamentarians around our common sea, the Mediterranean, that were very much sensitive and very active on the protection of the sea. And we're also actually supported by other networks. The Mediterranean Information Office, which is an organization, I think that we have some representatives here, and the Secretariat General, Professor Skoulos, and also the Global Water Partnership Mediterranean, that is one of the most important organizers today, and also a circle of journalists. Because earlier today I heard about a very interesting comment on the participation of journalists in our sessions. And we do have a circle of Mediterranean journalists in order to promote transparency and information among our other networks, which is very important. And I would welcome everybody that is interested to joining either the circle of the parliamentarians or the circle of the journalists to come and join us. And as well, if anybody else is interested about joining the circle of the universities for the Mediterranean, we have a third circle. So it's all about networks here today. And with me, the co-chair is Mr. Khaled Abuzeid, Regional Water Resources Program Manager of CEDARE. We are very happy to have with us distinguished guests. First of all, Mr. Francois Brikké, Senior Network Officer of the Global Water Partnership, which is based in Sweden, and I'm very glad to work with you and learn from you as the Vice Chair of the Steering Committee of the Global Water Partnership, which I also serve. We also have with us Mr. Faraj Awar, Senior Advisor of UN Habitat and former Head of Secretariat of GWOPA of the UN Habitat. Welcome and join our panel. Mr. Ramiro Martínez. Mr. Martínez is a General Coordinator of the Mediterranean Network of Basin organizations, including a Secretariat to the 5+5 initiative for the Western Mediterranean. Thank you very much for joining us today. And Mr. Joan Parpal, who is a member of the Board of Directors, the Mediterranean Water Institute, including as co-organiser of the Med Regional process for the 8th World Water Forum. Thank you very much for being here with us. In the first part, we heard some very interesting recommendations and statements, and some worries, actually. And for these recommendations and your contributions, I would like to warmly really thank you, because the recommendations that you share, they are recommendations that we all actually have in our mind, and we would like to spread the word around. First of all, water is very central. It's a very important point and transcends many sectors, the public health sector, the development sector, the climate change sector. But because of this sectoral nature of water, there is not special attention mainly on water issues. And maybe this is one of the reasons why not enough financial instruments are dedicated only or mainly to water. And as a result, many either administrators within the countries or NGOs or even businesses that would like to invest more on water, they're not able to. So the first consideration that we heard is that we need to focus more on water from a public and private point of view. I especially like one recommendation to have a new global fund on water, and I would also welcome the development of private funds as well. And one thing, if we want to have like new finance, is that we need to know about the new finance. Because if you Google right now, you might find some new financial instruments on water. But most of the people, including me, we don't know about them. So we need more information, knowledge mainstreaming, and education about water finance in our region and globally. And this is where the journalists and the educators have a very important role to play, and in addition to those are expert networks. So we need a new model of governance which actually focuses more on the participation and the development of the multi-stakeholder platforms. If we don't have multi-stakeholder platforms, then in the case of water, we're going to miss part of the image of the water governance, because water governance is so complicated, so we all need to come together in order to have the full picture of it and in order to be effective. On top of that, one of the reasons why we should have multi-stakeholder platforms in the case of water is because by these platforms we become more effective when we search for finance. Because the financial institutions, either banks or the international finance institutions, they are looking to finance projects that are going to be salient, bankable, and they're going to have a real impact on the local communities, and they're going to have like very transparent also and very silent tariffs. So in order to achieve all these multiple goals, you need to bring on the table all the stakeholders. So in order to have sustainable development, sustainable finance, education, information, we need all of you here, and this is why, once again, we welcome you for being here today, and we welcome the organizers. So my co-chair today, what is your feedback on that? Did you have any other views of today's discussion?
Thank you very much, Dionysia, for this wonderful introduction. I have some views, of course, on what was going on the last 2 days, and I think it was a very fruitful conference discussing water governance and sustainable financing. I think all the sessions were very fruitful of several ideas and examples and practices in the region, in the Mediterranean. On water governance, I may add that it is very important to have planning in place, strategies, plans, future development plans in place, because you cannot work without having a futuristic plan. And now that we have the SDG 6, Sustainable Development, the Sustainable Development Goal number 6, dedicated for water, it's a very important and useful opportunity for all of us to start having plans for at least achieving this goal 6. And luckily this goal 6 includes all aspects of water. We're not talking here about, when we talk about water governance, we're not just talking about drinking water or water supply for drinking purposes or domestic supply. We're talking about water resources management in general. If you look at goal 6 with all its 8 targets and maybe about 12 indicators, it addresses all aspects of water management, from drinking water to wastewater and sanitation, to recycling and reuse, to integrated water resources management, to transboundary water management, several aspects that provides a very good opportunity for every country to put in place a strategic plan for achieving this goal 6 until year 2030. One of the things that are important also in water governance is water accounting. We need to know exactly where our water resources is going, who's using how much. This is a very important part, and it's part of metering. We need to have metering on all of our users to know exactly where the water is going. I always say that you cannot manage what you don't measure. So if you're not measuring how much you're using or where the losses are going, there will be no governance in managing this water resource. Stakeholder participation is very important. When we put a plan or a strategy, we have to consult with all the stakeholders because they are the ones that will be affected by one project or another, and it's very important to take that into consideration. I don't know how many of us in our countries have the the project, the infrastructure projects put in a library for consultation. I know some countries that have to put this for the public for at least 60 days to consult before approving. And it's part of approving a project, including the environmental impact assessment of the project and everything. So this is very important. Transparency, accountability, and also water governance at the transboundary level. A lot of our water resources are shared between more than one country. And it is very important to also include transboundary water governance. Before a project is put in place, there has to be consultation between the riparian countries, sharing this common and shared resource. On sustainable financing, and this is the second topic of our conference, we need to be looking at innovative mechanisms for financing, cost recovery mechanisms, and these cost recovery mechanisms may also include subsidies for the poor. It's not a bad thing to have subsidies, but targeted subsidies, because in many cases you might find that the rich are benefiting from the subsidies and it's not necessarily reaching the target group. We need to have proper investment plans, and as I mentioned, when we're talking about SDG 6 achievement, you have to have an associated investment plan and to know exactly how much is the government going to contribute to this investment plan, how much is the gap, and what countries are ready to support which countries in which projects. And also the private sector has to have a role there. The NGOs have to be also involved, because sometimes they have also their resources, and their in-kind contribution is sometimes substantial as well and very important. We need to be also looking at financing projects by looking at the end use of these projects. When we're talking about a wastewater treatment plant, for instance, we have to plan our wastewater treatment facilities with reuse in mind, with recycling in mind. Now, especially in our arid region, wastewater use is going to be the new renewable water resource, because as people increase in population, the domestic water supply has to increase, and 80% of the domestic water supply goes back to sanitation, to sewage. So you have an 80% that's increasing with time, with population increase, at least in the South Mediterranean. But it is important to look at this wastewater in mind when we are planning our wastewater treatment plants, in terms of proximity to the reuse facility, but also in terms of financing, because including the private sector or the end users, like industries that may be recycling this water, or agriculture that may be reusing this water, you may have a new financing mechanism to finance your sanitation, your sewage treatment and collection, by putting reuse in mind. And I also proposed something in the group that we had, this what may be a global water facility that we need, and we have here several representatives of the banks and the donor agencies, and I think we need to be thinking of the possibility of establishing a global water facility, similar to the GEF, the Global Environment Facility, or the Green Climate Fund. And now that we have SDG 6, it's a good opportunity also to connect all the thoughts of and all the resources that are available, whether it's private sector or the banks, the development banks, and maybe establish this global water facility. And a good example was the African Water Facility. Some of you may be aware of the African Water Facility, and I was personally involved in establishing this under the umbrella of the African Ministers' Council on Water, where the idea came, and we put together the idea, and now the African Water Facility is contributing to preparing projects for the water sector in Africa. I don't want to take much of your time, but I think now we can probably move to the speakers of the panel, this distinguished panel that we.
You are the co-chair. You can take as much time as you want.
No. Thank you.
Francois, would you like to share with us your views? Would you like to reflect on the morning session and also to let us know a little bit about what the Global Water Partnership is doing, being one of the most important international organizations and networks on water? Thank you.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you very much, Dionysia and Khaled, for your very thoughtful comments, and especially thanks a lot to all of you, listening to the recommendations, looking at your passion, dedication during the working groups. It's quite amazing. With some of you giving an amazing, very high level of input. So it was really quite nice to see that we have a real competent floor here with us. But still, I must really admit that everything looks a bit complicated. I was trying to say, okay, what is it can I tell when I go back? I'm going to write my back to office report. What is it that I can report on? And I say, we've got the title of this conference is about strengthening integrity and financing for water security. So the thing, what we heard this morning about financing, I tried to associate one word. What would be that key word? I was thinking access. Access, because we really were talking, everything that we heard a lot was trying to improve access, trying to see where this could be at different levels. I will get into that a bit after. And the second word regarding integrity, what would be that word? I was thinking change of mindset. Because we're talking about two different things. We're talking about, access of different tools, and the other one is not only about tools, but it's especially about attitudes, about institutional behavior and all this. So there's a change that needs to be happening. So if we look at the first one, access, what is really interesting is that we have many new innovative financial mechanisms. But the problem is that we don't know how to deal with them. So we need a lot of capacity building, understanding them. What is the procedure? How to get access to them? So there's a big need, and I think that could be something coming out. If you look at the Green Climate Fund, you look at the green bonds, you look at the blended mechanisms, you look at the co-financing mechanisms, you look at the corporate financing. There are many interesting new mechanisms, new thinking. We can even enrich this, Dionysia, maybe also with some of the thinking that is coming out from the Addis Ababa Declaration on the financing for development. A lot of good things there. So we are in a period of change regarding financing. We used to be thinking of traditional donors. Now there's a big change that we don't know completely how to do that. There is expertise in the room, I can assure you. That was really, really good, but how can we make it known to everyone? So one point is really about helping the sector to really know what is available and how to access to it. But you know what? We also noticed that we have to be careful. We are not talking, if we want to have more access to finance, maybe we should not be talking about the water sector. We should be saying that water is a connector. It's not only a sector, it's a connector. It's a connector with many different sides of the development panel. It's a connector with agriculture, energy, development, health, etc. Ecosystems as well. So if we look at this dimension, it helps us to access to more financing. So this is a point, I think, Dionysia, which we discussed actually in our working group. We were together, which could be an interesting point to look at. And regarding the global water facility, which is indeed something that really would push forward countries to help preparing projects. So just to finalize, access. What is there? How do you actually access to this? And also, how do you actually prepare project proposals under these different projects? Now, the second point, the point about change of mindset, integrity. You know what? I speak also for GWP. We, of course, know about integrity, we know about transparency, but we don't really know completely always very well how to deal with it yet. The teams in our networks don't know. We need also to be very much raising, not awareness anymore, but building the capacity. How do you deal with this? When you're in a country, who do you talk to? What do you do? And it's different in every country. So the professionality, because this requires professionalism. Everything requires professionalism. But this particular issue can be extremely sensitive to tackle. So really, I think in many organizations, including ours, needs much more capacity, but also a self-evaluation. Maybe we should look back, and not only us, but everyone should look back on itself before preaching it. Where are we standing regarding integrity? How are we actually promoting it? So these are the 2 points there, which I thought was important. And the final point, I think, Dionysia and Khaled, which I really was very much interested. Every time we've got nice ideas, want to promote a change, we've got all these recommendations, etc. But how do I start? How do I get the sparkle that start up the whole system, the change? And this is something which we may want to reflect. And I think you brought something very much, Dionysia, in your introduction. The thing about multi-stakeholder partnership allows to create this common vision that allows for change to happen. But to get the people together, you also need a change. You need a leader. You need a champion. We need someone that actually promotes this. And who are they? I think they are here in this room. We are responsible for the change to happen. And the way we can actually promote this is really important. Now, oh yes, and someone made a very, very smart remark this morning also. We should not start by scratch. Things are happening. We are not reinventing completely the world. Some good practices, best practices exist. NGOs do some very good work as well. So let us not be too ambitious on what we think we can do. Things are already happening, but we can indeed help this to move along. So GWP, we are ready very much to help introduce this change. We are really wanting to promote MSPs, multi-stakeholder partnerships. We are ready with you to do this work, and as we believe it is a central engine of development, as the SDGs are saying. SDG 17 is the principal engine of change for all the other change SDGs. Thank you very much, Dionysia.
Thank you very much, Francois. And we are also delighted to have with us Dr. Faraj Awar. I would be very interested to hear your views. You have great experience with the UN Habitat and the water utilities, so your experience from that sense would be very useful. Please.
Thanks, Dr. Abuzeid, and thanks, Dionysia. And I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this very enriching, actually, meeting. And the theme of the meeting is very important. It's, looking at finance and integrity as components of water governance. And these are very important, especially for the region. Now, with respect to finance, however, I attended the first day. I couldn't attend yesterday, or part of the first day, because of a health issue. But in the first panel, or up to the lunch of that day, what I realized is that there is a lot of discussion about incentivizing the private sector to participate in the finance, and banks especially. But there was not enough discussion on the public investment. Where's the role of the governments, really? And that's a very important issue, because, in our region, the private sector is actually participating so far in management of water networks and sometimes in delivering water as water utilities and operators. There are some successful examples, mainly in Jordan, I think, and Algeria. There is some other examples that are not as successful. We can talk about that also. But all these examples, the private sector did not really start to finance the water sector yet. It is not happening. And there is a lot of reasons for that. And even before, there is a lot of reasons for that, and there is a lot of prerequisites for that to happen. And the major prerequisite, in my opinion, is the enhancement or the capacity development of the public sector. Because the public sector needs to know, number one, how to handle its water resources, how to manage its utilities and water service providers, in order to be able to handle any private sector involvement. And in the first day, the colleague from Albania who presented or who was a panelist, she said that. She said that, we are entering the EU, there's a lot of directives, there's a lot of requirements that we need to meet, and it is very hard to go it on our own, and we'd like the private sector to be there, but we cannot handle their involvement. So the capacity development of the public sector is really a prerequisite. And we should not start from a baseline saying that, okay, government is a huge dead body, let's forget about it and take this as reality and move from there. I think this reality, if it is a reality in some of our countries, of course, it is reality in some of our countries. I can talk about my country in that respect, but we should face this reality, and I think we should look at enhancing the capacity of the public sector in our countries as a real priority for the management of the water sector and for the financing of the water sector, for attracting more finance, and for really delivering the SDGs or SDG targets for water and sanitation that Khaled talked about. In one of the recommendations that I really liked from the group on donors, I think, they were asking how to translate the right to water. This is very important. How to translate the right to water. What are the objectives of water governance? And these objectives, in my opinion, should be how to meet the SDGs on the local and national levels. How can we help the water utilities and water operators to deliver these services, both water and sanitation services, to the poorest sectors of the societies? And I can tell you from my experience with the Water Operator Partnerships Alliance, the utilities, and rightfully so, from their perspective, they are not that much attracted to go to slums, for example. or to go to the poor, to extend their service to the poor sectors of the society, because they cannot recover their cost. So this issue, the extension of the services to the poor, is definitely beyond the it is the responsibility of the utilities, of course, but it is beyond their reach. They should be supported for that. And definitely this support, of course, donors are supporting, development agencies are supporting, are enhancing the capacities of water operators, but the biggest support should, or we should require the national governments to give this support. We shouldn't assume that, no, they cannot give it, let's look for something else. Now, also I picked a recommendation about decentralization. And, of course, trying to involve all stakeholders, including civil society, etc., and all other stakeholders, private sector, etc. Now, decentralization is excellent, and especially when we have city utilities or regional utilities, like in Lebanon, for example. So, empowering these bodies through decentralization is very important. But the decentralization, if it is not coupled with the empowerment, and especially with financial support to the decentralized bodies, then decentralization becomes simply devolvement of responsibility from the central government and giving it to a body that cannot govern. I mean, I can give you a simple example from my hometown in Lebanon. It's a very small town. One of the donor agencies built a sewage treatment plant and gave it to our municipality. However, this plant, which was built more than around maybe 12 years ago, it has never seen water except from rain. Because our municipality does not have the capacity. It's a very small municipality, 3,000 people, the inhabitants. So the municipality does not have the capacity to operate it even, or to pay for the electricity bill. So simply, they're not using it. And our raw sewage simply is still going to the nearest stream, to the town. So decentralization is very good. However, it needs the tools and the empowerment of the decentralized bodies. Of course, a lot has been also mentioned about regulations and regulatory bodies and integrity. Regulation, of course, everything needs regulation. The governance of the whole sector, the attraction of finance, and the involvement of both the public and private sectors in the water governance. The involvement of all stakeholders in the regulation is very important. However, still the responsibility to regulate and to enforce the law, we should not relieve the governments from that, and the parliamentary bodies. You've talked about the parliamentarians. They have a lot of responsibility here. And all of that is definitely related to integrity. Integrity, of course, a lot of donors are working on integrity in the water sector. We know that CEDARE is very active in that. SIWI is working together with a lot of regional bodies, including GWP Med, including UFM, including AQUA, including ESQUA, and I know CEDARE is participating in that. So a lot of donors and development agencies are working on integrity in the water sector. And I'm sure that this, at least on the awareness level and on the data collection, has done a lot. However, to turn around the ambience regarding corruption and moving toward, like turning the tide and moving toward integrity in the water sector, needs a lot more, and needs to know that we cannot tackle this in the water sector alone as an island on its own. I don't think that can happen. Integrity needs a lot of effort to become really a law-abiding society altogether in our region. And this needs, I heard among the recommendations, a recommendation to talk about integrity and within the school curriculums. This is very important. But we need to become a law-abiding society, and integrity has to be tackled comprehensively throughout the public and private sectors in our region. This is the only way that I think we can turn our societies into, as I said, law-abiding societies. And that would go, that's true about the water sector and all other sectors of governance. And I will leave it here for this.
Thank you very much for your introduction, and actually you spoke to my mind and my heart with what you said, because integrity and capacity building of the public sector is very important. It's not only about money. Let me give you a very sad and recent example from my country. The region of Attica, which is one of the most important and central regions of Greece, had since 2014 80 million euros to build the management of the plan for the floods of the region and make the region resilient to floods. And they did nothing. And 1 month ago, 21 people died. They were drowned in almost the center of Attica, in Athens. And we're in 2017. The money was there. But people, either they did not know what to do from the region and the municipality, that means that they need capacity building, or they really chosen not to do anything. And this is why you need integrity. And you need to have high ethics when you are in government and when you are in parliament. So money is not everything. And we need to make sure that whoever is dealing with water issues and with public health issues and with resilient cities is actually knowledgeable and capable and willing to do whatever he or she should do. This is very important. Otherwise, we're not only going to suffer out of water shortage or money shortage, but we're going to mourn victims. Now, before I pass the floor to you, because I used to be a former member of the Parliament, I would like to emphasize indeed the crucial role that the parliamentarians play in the whole management of the water sector by fleshing out two roles of the parliamentarians that we tend to forget. First of all, parliamentarians, they actually have the capacity to approve or disapprove the budget of the state. So if members of the parliament would like really to influence the planning of a state, or sometimes also networks of states, they can't do it. just by rejecting what the government is proposing regarding the budget and requesting for more allowance for the water sector of money. And secondly, of course, because the parliamentarians, they're able either to propose bills or to withdraw and reject bills for the new management. And this is very important because a bill, a statute, is actually there to make things, to make the institutional framework clearer, to know who is responsible for what, who should take the responsibility or the initiative for what, and who should hold not only the financial accountability, but also the criminal accountability in case something bad happens. In order to have more parliamentarians that are able to formulate and be active in the water management and planning sector, we definitely need to educate parliamentarians, because not all parliamentarians know about these specific expert issues of water. For example, I don't know what the 5+5 initiative for the Western Mediterranean is. Could you please educate me, Mr. Martínez?
Thank you very much, Dionysia. Tout d'abord, bonjour à tous et merci.
First, thank you to everyone. Thank you to the organization for all being here. It's very interesting. I am Ramiro Martínez, and I work at the Mediterranean network of basin organizations. We are a regional network belonging to an international network that you may know. So there are there is the Secretariat in Paris, and in the Mediterranean network we have one in Spain, here in Valencia, and the Secretariat is supported by the Spanish government. So we are used to working together, and in this presentation I would like to bring the message and the advice of the basin, which is important here. We work in the field of the basin, especially the management, like planning. When I say management, I mean integrated management of water resources. This management is linked with the general image of governance that we mentioned, if you like, management and planning at a lower level. So we talked about this during the 2 days. So why basin organizations? There is a large experience with everyone in the management, the work at this level. There are many agencies in the world, and we heard Morocco, for example. We have a high representative of an important basin organization in Morocco. Maybe you know of others, like basin organizations for other areas, for the English speakers, French speakers. For we Spanish, we call it Hydrographic Confederation. So that's the name of the confederation, which removes the spirit of the creation of this confederation. So we have Spain for a century has been working on this since 1920. It was a confederation which started here in the south of Barcelona, and so it comes out of a spirit of collaboration among users. So it is a confederation means the meeting of users to find together decisions to face problems and challenges of water management and activity around water. So this culture exists in Spain, and there was an old Arab culture and tradition of use of water. We heard reference to Valencia courts, very old, which is a participatory system founded by Arabs here, founded around 1,000 years ago. So, and it still operates now. Every Thursday they meet near the cathedral in Valencia, and there is a representative of the system who speaks, and we hear the problems of farmers, and justice must be given. So, in our opinion, the role of the agencies, of the basin organizations, is important in this general pattern of governance. For us, it is an institution, as I said, where we can meet all the professional stakeholders who plan and manage water resources in order to reach the aim of water protection. And this is in connection with what we have just heard now. So it represents a decentralized system along with natural borders made by water. So we are an international organization gathering many countries around the Mediterranean. We are convinced of the importance of sharing knowledge in the management of water. So we are not making new inventions every day. We need to know the experiences of others to help each other. On the other hand, good access to water is a human right. I agree to what our colleague was saying. So first, it is the national governments which must guarantee this right. But at the end, maybe we will find a system that we talked about earlier, where we can engage the private sector to provide this service. But the first challenge, it is the governments which must guarantee this right of access to water. And the international community must not forget its responsibility with regards water resources. So in this field of cooperation and transfer of knowledge, I can give you a few words in connection with the process 5+5. And I begin by reminding you something you know. There was a process between 2008 and 2010 to have a joint strategy for water resources in the Mediterranean. And this strategy was meant to start here in Barcelona. There was a ministerial conference for the Union of the Mediterranean in April 2010, and all the documents were approved here. There were all the national delegations, but when we reached the final declaration, some words were related to some political problems in the region, and so we did not succeed. This is the reason why in 2013 some countries of Western Mediterranean, those we call something else, we established a similar process to study the same thing in Western Mediterranean. There are 5 countries of the north, Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, and Malta, and 5 countries of the south, Mauritania, Morocco, Egypt, Tunisia, and Libya. So after 3 years of work, we are very happy to have reached some product approved by all the ministers. There is a joint strategy of the work for the 10 countries approved at the ministerial conference in Azier in April 2015. And there was a strategy and the main guidelines that were decided and approved jointly by the countries. So, at COP in Marrakesh, we approved an action plan related to this strategy, and And the group 5+5, at the beginning, it was a group of national delegations, informal delegations, but in the case of the initiative, we filled a plus to all the organizations in the Mediterranean which helped us, and they were with us in the process. Apart from the 10 countries which I mentioned, there are 3 members, official new members, which are the Union for the Mediterranean, the European Commission, and the Union for the Arab Maghreb. So we will work together in this process with these 3. And this is the initiative 5+5. I will end with a personal view on a question which I listened during these 2 days. I don't remember who the speaker was, but it was an excellent presentation which started with inequality of wealth around the world. And the speaker showed the progress of these wealth indexes over many years. And the speaker demonstrated on the basis of the various regions, which were the more advanced countries, the poorest countries. But then, according to this, we reached the same conclusion, which I don't understand much, which is that, so the conclusion is that must protect water resources. So I don't understand this. I think that we need a mediator. If there is a problem or inequality of wealth, solutions must be sought by giving back wealth, restituting wealth. So that's what I meant. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Merci.
And now we'll give the floor to Mr. Joan Parpal, member of the Board of Directors of the Mediterranean Water Institute. Please.
Good morning, everybody. I has been asked to make some strategic suggestions of the outputs and the acts, the facts of the conference. First of all, I will say that for me it has been very interesting, the conference, mainly for the force of the concepts. Has been a very good choice. The 2 themes of the conference, for me mainly the second, integrity as sustainability, as I would say governance, on I would say concepts objective that guides us to work for and to design a better world. And integrity is really very interesting in water sector. At the starting, I say, why integrity in water sector? But it's quite fruitful. But I say, as a thought, that what is important, the challenge is to transform it in reality, and that is not easy. But after these days, I will try to suggest you some applications of this concept to the reality in the water management sector or field in the Mediterranean. I will say first of all that for me, governance, that is mainly participation, transparency, and accountability. I will focus in participation as many of the others, because is for me quite important in the search for our approach in the 2 issues. In our sector is, as he has spoken about about the Basin agencies. is historically is something that has been used very much in our sector. No? Not only the Basin agencies, but also the communities of irrigation, the communities of users of aquifers, the contract of lagoon or contracts of the river in the French legislation, used also, I think, now in Morocco. The many hydrological plans methodology, the world uses it a lot. It's, for me, important to pass this message, because participation can help a lot transparency and accountability. Because, okay, sorry, because participation can help a lot the other two, no? That is transparency and accountability. Because at the end is a question of culture, it's a question of education, it has been said, it's a question of ethics. And the human being, by chance, is still an ethic man, in my opinion. And that is the base for us to advance in all the issues. I will make a sort of a practical suggestion in this issue. I will say that the conference should take the model of the committees of users for aquifers, something to improve in our region. It's really one of the main problems for the fight against the water stress, the quality, the capacity of renovation and recharge and utilization of our aquifers. Is something that in the programs that has been presented here has been presented many interesting cases, but mainly in agriculture, in the agriculture field, but can be extended. You know, aquifers, the urban coastal aquifers is very important, and in many of our continents, the drilling of illegal is made, and I think it's something relevant to. I will continue in another sector for me important, and is professionally one of my experience, that is the urban issue. In the Mediterranean, for me, is the urban dynamics one of the main challenges, and in water issues more. Then I would like to focus in applying the conference approach to the urban issues in the water sector. I will underline 4 aspects. One is urban and territorial planning. The urban occupation of our territory is terrible, and that affects a lot our water management in terms of aquifers, in terms of floods, in terms of many things. It's important to fight to introduce very more the urban aspects in our territorial planning, and then the urban planning also. The urban planning, if it's helped by the water issues is strong, it's very fruitful for many issues. For example, in the case of Montpellier is one of the case important for the flood prevention, for the non-conventional water resources utilization, for example, in terms of the use for green spaces and so on. The second is the non-conventional water resources field. I think that the multi-level governance in urban issues is something important. The acting together national authorities and the different ministers in the urban issue with the local authorities and civil society, for example, to improve the use of grey waters or rain harvesting, introducing the participation of the constructors, the tourist sector, the civil society, improving this is perhaps not very important in terms of volume of water, if you compare with the 80% of using agriculture, but it's very important politically and in governance issues. I will finalize about one aspect of financing. It's not my field, but that is the issue of tariffs. For water governance, the tariffs are a very important tool for modeling the behavior of consumers. I think that we have to go more and more in terms of cost payment for the polluters in the tariff of industrial sector, or progressive tariffs in the domestic sector or the equipments for the excess of volume, at the same time with small tariff, low cost tariffs for the poor, as has been said. I hope that my intervention in my bad English has been fruitful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well. And not only the behavior of the consumers, but for us parliamentarians, the behavior of the voters. So you should vote whoever you think that is going to be the best parliamentarian for water issues. Now, me and my co-chair Khaled, we decided to sing something for you together. But because we don't have enough time, we will open up the floor for questions and answers. Okay. So only 5 minutes, some questions, and we will come back to you. Please, sir.
Thank you very much. Very quick, my question to you, Mr. Francois. We agree with you, 100% water is connector. How we will translate this into action when it comes to the political level? Mr. Faraj Awar, thank you very much for the information. Private sector is not financing the water sector at all. How come? We have many investment in the water sector. Or you mean that there is investment but not financing? Last question for Ramiro. How you will be able to, you said something about innovative approach. How you will bring the water strategy for 5+5 into reality? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. 2 more. Yes, sir.
Merci beaucoup. J'ai une question.
Thank you very much. During this conference, we have spoken mainly about water integrity. However, we forgot about an important term which is necessary to elaborate the urban documents, which is the water integrity in case of an extreme situation, such as disasters, floods, and especially in period of drought. So how can we include these disasters in water integrity? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good question, Mr. Francois. You said there are a lot of funding facilities. It's not capacities, it's knowledge. Where are they? Are we aware of all of these? Is there any party who can list them for us, who can try our best? Thank you. Mr. Parpal, 2 comments. First, you talk about aquifer user committees, but most of the aquifers in our region are transboundary. Is that still valid? And again, you talk about urban planning. Now we talk about urban expansion, not planning, because planning is already done. Now we talk about urban expansion. your values are still valid in this? Thank you.
Hello.
Please, a question down there, and then your question, and we're done, and we have to go to very speed answers.
I have regarding the 5+5 process and the water strategy implementation. I would like to ask if it is a possibility maybe to implement, or maybe it is already implemented, to implement the co-funding for some, to implement some action of water in the region.
Okay. I'm Ramadan from South Lebanon Water Establishment. I would like to emphasize on what Mr. Awar mentioned about law-abiding society. As you know, the Middle East and the MENA region is now, in the last few years, going through experiencing lots of societal changes and political changes. I don't know if the SDGs that you mentioned, already prepared many, many years back, have taken into consideration or is dynamic enough to take the constraint and the challenges already in place in the Middle East, first. Secondly, we have, for example, as Lebanon, as Jordan, or many countries that have hosted lots of displaced Syrian refugees in a very short time. We have the donors and loaners have provided money to the establishment to enhance their capacities in terms maybe building capacities or providing rehabilitation for some stations. However, as a trade-off, there have been free water for the displaced. This has created a detrimental effect on the collection of bills from the peoples that are existing. Why these loaners or donors haven't used the same approach, for example, as UN, United Nations for the Palestinians, UNRWA, for example, who are placing, they are collecting directly, paying to the government for the electricity bills that, for example, the Palestinian camps are consuming, etc. By this, you won't have a detrimental effect on the subscribers by themselves who are finding themselves paying, whereas their neighbor are not paying. In addition, for the water, we found, for example, in the electricity haven't been followed the same path as water. We can find, for example, for water, in the camps, they have dig wells. Of course, this is not good for the groundwater. In addition, that it gives some peoples, either available citizen men or outsiders, free water, which is detrimental also again to the accountability to the person or the subscriber for the water. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the speedy answers. Francois.
Okay, speedy. Connectors. Just try, take the SDGs, for example. What is really interesting, we did this exercise. You look at, take it the other way. Don't take the SDGs one by one. Take a good approach that you think is going to make a change in your country. Integrated water resource management, for example, or whatever. And look at afterwards what impact it has on each one of them. You will be amazed. Direct, indirect, or secondary impacts. We've done that exercise. We can share that with you. And what's nice, it even has an impact on employment, on energy security, on food security. And what is nice is that you can sell your water project as an employment generation project. So this is what is interesting. You go to a mayor, you're not going to tell him about water pipes. You're going to tell him about how much jobs you have created. So you see what I mean? This connection of, it's not repackaging. It's a way of repackaging, yeah. But you are actually connecting to other points which are key for development. You see what I mean? Water being an engine of growth and of development. So that's the connector part. Now, the point on financing, wow, there's so many things happening. You just take the Paris Agreement, on climate change, and try to follow up, everything that is happening in terms of climate financing. We speak all the time about the Green Climate Fund, but there are many different funding mechanisms that even all the donors are not going through. But I think it's not only the source of funding we have to look at, but the mechanism of funding. Because now we are looking at, like CEDARE, Swedish donors. They used to give, project funding from. Now they're looking at guarantee funds. How can you actually guarantee? I put up a fund that will guarantee your project in front of different investments. This is a mechanism. It's innovative. It's different. There are many such green bonds, corporate financing. And so I think, and maybe I would like to propose to Michael Skoulos, who is here, and my colleagues, maybe together with other colleagues here, we need to do a compendium of these innovative financing mechanisms that exist that maybe needs to be shared. And the last point is regarding resilience. I don't know who asked this question on resilience. It was you. Sur les, je vais reprendre en français. Sur les questions liées.
Let me answer in French concerning the issue related to extreme situations such as drought and flooding. We are very fortunate because what is positive in these disasters is that could also bring creativity, and we become really very creative in terms of financing and in terms of resilience. We can also talk about climate change. In Paris yesterday or the day before yesterday, there were many decisions taken in matters of resilience and at the level of financing, and this happens day by day.
Thank you. I'd like to answer first regarding the private sector financing. I don't think in our region that we have really private investments at scale. And what's more important is that I don't think that we can rely on private investments to achieve the SDGs in the region. There's a lot to do before we can rely on that. There's a lot to do with respect, especially, again, with respect to the capacity development of the public sector to be able to handle financing. And not only that, we need to work really on the political will of the national governments to prioritize the water sector and to prioritize investment in order to reach the SDGs, and not only investment, in order to prioritize the capacity development of the utilities and water operators that will actually physically provide access to all, global access to water and sanitation services. Without that political will, I don't think that we can reach that by 2030. And I mean, the political will of governments was among the recommendations that were given by one of the groups. I want also to talk about the cost recovery issue that was mentioned by our colleague from South Lebanon Water Establishment. For sure, water utilities should never be forced to provide water for free to anybody. For sure, this is a golden rule, if you want. I think the solution is for the donor groups that are supporting the refugees to pay for this bill, same as the electricity. Now, definitely a society like the Lebanese society, or 4 million, receiving 1.5 million refugees in a few months, this is very much, this is a huge pressure on all services, not only water. But the cost recovery, to start with, from the beginning, before the refugees, coming to Lebanon, and not only in Lebanon, throughout our region and throughout the developing world. Cost recovery is very important, but take this example. How can you recover the full cost if you have 50% non-revenue water? If you really recover this cost, then the citizens will be subsidizing your inefficiency, right? So the cost recovery issue in our countries should be tackled from several perspectives. There is also, like for example, if you include in the tariff not only the operation and maintenance, but the investment cost, that's beautiful. I mean, if there is willingness to pay and there is capacity to pay by the citizens with cross-subsidy, etc. That's also beautiful, but that's very good. However, there is also a requirement here, the ring-fencing of the utility budgets, because also in the recommendations, some colleagues were saying, yeah, when all the collected revenues of the utilities might go to the maintenance of the car of the head of the utility or the head of the municipality, or might be confiscated altogether by the central government. So the cost recovery issue altogether is very important, but it has a lot of prerequisites to be done effectively and to pay for the costs, for the real costs of the utility, and hopefully at one stage for even the investment costs.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Martínez.
Oui, je vais essayer de répondre très vite à les deux questions.
I will try to answer the process 5+5. What said Montez, this is not a question of implementing the strategy, because the strategy includes two major components. First of all, this is a guideline documents for the countries so that they know how to deal with the restructuring of the water. In addition, there are some action plans, and we have a strong project and a weaker project. Currently, we are developing projects, especially the projects related to capacity building and to the skills. I forgot to say that we started to work with 5+5, and then we had the UFM that worked with us, and we are thinking for synergy in order to have more effective work. Next week, next Monday, 18th, there will be a workshop held in Spain devoted to the allocation of conventional and non-conventional resources, which is promoted by 5+5, and this is open to all members of the Mediterranean. So this is a technical expert group, and we are here as an observatory, and this is included in the action plan 5+5.
Well, three questions for transboundary. I think that it's the same, but a bit difficult. As the management of the transboundary river basin, the aquifers can be managed. The problem is by a committee with 2 countries or 3 countries and negotiating. The problem is who are the negotiating parts. And I think the one is different depending of the boundary that you have. Second, the issue of urban plans and the relation with integrity and fruits and extreme crises and so on. The extension of the cities is a fact. The important is that the plans will introduce the water issues and will be endorsed, and that they will not make urbanizations in the hills and the runoff goes down and change all the historical equilibriums of the rivers and of the plains of the and so on. No? And inside also you can make a park collecting waters and retaining it and so on. In many countries, France was starting in the urban plans. There is a reglement related for the fruits, for the fruits, and you have, and in Germany, you pay less if you make an urbanization maintaining the roof off that was first. That is something to be made. And finally, was the issue. Yes, of the extreme cases, the extreme cases of fruits, the other, of not water. I would say also that is something that will be introduced in our rules, in our policies. It's as the theme of the fires in the forest of in the Mediterranean is something that at this stage is not introduced. For example, our aquifers, coastal aquifers, is a big instrument to fight against these problems, but we are not using them because it's impossible to use it. You don't change this. You understand me?
Thank you very much. Information, integrity, transparency, clear legislation, capacity building, and network development. Let's stick together and raise money for water and for our people. Congratulations to this wonderful panel. Thank you very much.